All right, let's get into it. So my name is Selekshana and I use she, her pronouns. I'm an energy finance campaigner at Rainforest Action Network, and I organize the 350 Seattle and the divestment defund working group. I'm calling in today from occupied Duwamish and Coast Salish territory here in Seattle. And I appreciate all of you being here. And yeah, kind of joining us, given that last minute change with the meeting, and hope that you're all taking care of each other in the midst of this coronavirus outbreak. So I am just going to make sure all of our sound is working okay. It's looking good. So a few logistics before we jump in. If you see the chat there at the bottom of your screen, feel free to type any questions, thoughts, introductions, tell folks who you are, where you're calling in from. And we will be also sharing links as we go along for more information in the chat. If you have specific questions that you want panelists to answer, please use the Q&A box. That should also be on the bottom of your screen. It's like a square with a Q in it, and you can type your questions there, and we will have a Q&A session at the end. So try to get to them there. And the last thing is that we have some slides. We will be sending these around after the webinar, and we'll also be recording. So if you have to leave early, if you have a friend that couldn't make it, then you can send this webinar to them. So let's dive in. As you probably saw from the introduction or description, we are going to be talking about stopping the money pipeline and how you can get involved here in Seattle. So to start with, we are going to have Rachel Heaton and Matt Remley from Mazaska Talks talk about the amazing work they've done on bank financing and indigenous rights violations. And then we're going to pass it along to Cody and Sue, who are on the 350 Seattle Chase team, to talk about the Chase campaign, what's coming up, what's happened, how you can plug in. I'll be talking to you about insurance and Liberty Mutual in particular. And then we'll be joined by Jeff from Protectors of the Salish Sea, who's going to be speaking a bit about the work that the Protectors of the Salish Sea have been doing around banks, insurance companies, and other targets here in Washington State. So I am going to kick it over now to Matt and Rachel. Let me just make sure your microphones are on, and I will change the slide. And you should be good to go.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, I'm so sorry for being late, everyone. Thank you. And so I think here, is this the video that we have, Matt, showing?
Not quite yet. They got the slide of our homepage. So if you maybe just a little about yourself and our work getting started.
Oh, there you are. Now I can see you. Hi, I'm Rachel Heaton. I'm a Muckleshoot tribal member, and I'm also a descendant of the Duwamish people. I've been part of this work since about 2016, and I'm also one of the co-founders of Mazaska Talks here with Matt Remley, and I think today we'll kind of share more of what Mazaska Talks is about and the work we've done, and yeah, and I'm glad to be on here. So yeah, thank you.
Haamatakiapi, chante waste nape chiuzapelo, wakian wanatana machiapelo, ian woslaha amataha, ate wayaki Charles Remley, ina wayaki Donna Harrison. Good evening, everybody. My English name is Matt Remley. My Lakota name is Wakian Waanatan. Honkpapa Lakota from Standing Rock, but I live here in Seattle, and along with Rachel, co-founder of Mazaska Talks, My apologies for my tin voicey sound. I got a sinus infection, so I apologize in advance for that. But here to talk a little bit about, and thank you to Selexna and everybody and the other folks on this webinar for the great, awesome work that you all do, and for the partnerships that we've been able to have with you over the past several years. So Mazaska Talks, and actually to back up a little bit more, you know, the issue of, the tool of divestment isn't necessarily a new one. It's a strategy that communities around the globe have utilized in various capacities, ranging from South African apartheid into other divestment movements. It's not even necessarily new to the fossil fuel industry. When Keystone XL pipeline was first kind of brought out, divestment was actually something we used way back then. The difference being that at that time, we were primarily focused on getting individuals to close their accounts with like the Bank of Americas and Wells Fargo and Chase banks and stuff like that. What made Mazaska Talks different, or kind of how we came about, was in the fight against the Cold Access Pipeline. And we, as a strategy, one of the strategies, we wanted to go after those who are financing and profiting from these projects, these fossil fuel projects, and at that time, the Cold Access Pipeline in particular. And so we were able to work with folks from Food and Water Watch to get a list of who was financing the Cold Access Pipeline. And based on that list, we saw who kind of the primary financiers were, and we made them a target. Yet if they're gonna profit from funding the destruction of Maka and violating treaties, then we're gonna go after them. Not only did we ask individuals to close their accounts, but we started going after some bigger players as well, including the city of Seattle. This launched into, and you can go ahead and click the next slide. And I was actually from, that picture right there is from one of our campaigns where I think it was with 350 Seattle, got a number of their members to all close their Wells Fargo account on the same day. And so this individual was burning their card. So we took the divestment campaign to the city of Seattle, who was banking with Wells Fargo. And we kind of wanted to, kind of put their feet to the fire and say that we wanted them to essentially put teeth to a resolution we got them to pass that stated they opposed the construction of the pipeline. And that we're simply telling them that if that's true, then you shouldn't bank with and give your money to a Wall Street bank that's funding that pipeline. So that led into a divestment campaign to get the city to end its accounts, one that's still ongoing, but that kind of helps launch a number of other communities to launch similar campaigns. So with Mazaska Talks, we wanted to provide essentially like a clearinghouse, because poor Rachel and I were fielding calls from folks literally around the world on how to run similar campaigns in their communities. So we kind of wanted to put like a clearinghouse or toolkits together to answer those questions about, how can I run a similar campaign in my community? What are banks? What are options are there? And stuff like that. So that was kind of why we started at least the page to give those toolkits. You can go ahead and click the next page. Yeah, and then and I'm gonna let Rachel take over here, because I think this is a short little video we got about what our next piece was, due to some of the global work that Rachel and other Native women were involved with around going around to other countries to push divestment, leading into Divest the Globe.
Hey there, can you guys hear me? Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Yeah, so before we watched just kind of this quick video, It's about 3 minutes long. Continuing on this work that Matt's been talking about, a number of us, in the process of the divestment and everything, we went to over to Europe to talk about banks that are also invested in fossil fuel projects and projects desecrating Mother Earth. So we were also visiting coal sites and different areas that were being affected by similar projects that we're addressing over here. And again, in other areas, when we talk about New Zealand and Australia and just other places of just indigenous people being moved off of their lands. So we went to stockholders meetings. We took over meetings. We did some bank takeovers in Credit Suisse and a number of other banks over there addressing their investments in fossil fuels. So when we came back and talking with Matt and Alec at the time, we were talking about the work that everyone is so involved in here. And we thought, like, we wanted to do these days of action, these global days, or these days of action, targeting all of the banks over here, the Wall Street banks. So not just Wells Fargo at the time, but even Bank of America, Citibank, and so, because we wanted to find a way for all people to be able to get involved. That not just people who were banking with Wells Fargo, but any of these banks that are involved in these projects. So when we were talking about the ideas of these actions, because at the time, like, people were doing banner drops in stadiums. There was a number of just really great actions and things that we're taking over, just bringing the attention to these issues. And so, with the work that a number of us women were doing across seas and addressing these banks, we thought, well, and then the connections that we made, and then the work that Jackie Felder was doing in San Francisco, and the number of people that we had connected with across the nation, we just thought, like, so we were sitting there on the phone and we were like, well, let's, instead of doing these national days of action, let's do global days of action. And so that's kind of how, this, the global days of action came together, was just like using these connections and relationships that we had developed to address these on a larger scale. And so, if we want to watch just this 3 minutes, it kind of gives a bit of an overview of what we did over the Divest the Globe. So.
Great. Thank you, Matt and Rachel. I'm going to go over here and play this quick video now. I would love if folks could let me know if it's popping up in the chat. Do you see the video? Cool. So I'm gonna, oh no. Let me make it full screen here. Okay. Now we will play it for real.
These banks are causing problems all over the world. They're privatizing water. They're causing deforestation. There's pollution. And so today, we are divesting the globe. We've had actions in Paris, in Massachusetts, in Tampa, Toronto, Montreal. He said that if we left the letter there, that they would call the police. They reacted as if we were leaving a time bomb. The Chase Bank here is closed. I think they're closed for the day.
If the banks had a stronger filter around human rights, free, prior, and informed consent, what happened with the Dakota Access Pipeline with Standing Rock should have never happened.
This is my home we're talking about, this land, these rivers. I mean, I'm 14 years old. I can't do a lot that other people can. And what you can do is take your money out of the banks and start vocalizing your opinion. pipelines are a big issue in our communities. We will no longer let these things happen. We'll no longer let them take advantage of our people.
Divestment being the tool that we're using. It's what we're using to tell these oil companies that we will no longer stand for the desecration of Mother Earth. We will no longer continue to invest in these projects.
If there's enough financial risk goes to the banks as a result of these investments, then these investments will no longer be worth it for the banks.
Everybody is making an effort to go to their communities, their cities, their banks, and telling them, why are you allowing injustice to happen?
And we're calling them out. This has to stop. They can have a role in being accountable and making investments in renewables. It can stop.
The bank should not be investing in these kind of injustices.
We need to contemplate deeply. Our people, our First Peoples, know that path, a road to wellness and harmony and peace with every living thing.
At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is life. The only thing that matters is the future.
We can all choose where we put our money.
So that was their Divest the Globe campaign. And just to wrap up, I know we're kind of at probably towards the end of our time here, but with the Seattle divestment campaign, what we quickly found out was there's simply not other banks that were large enough to handle the city's account. And no credit unions and stuff like that could even handle their multi-billion-dollar year account. So what we have been engaged in since then is looking into starting a city-owned or state-owned public bank, and to just get away from Wall Street, period. So that's the current goal. We're currently working with both Seattle, King County, and the state legislature to get a public bank, and to totally get away from Wall Street banks, and then to provide kind of a platform for other communities who might find or face similar issues. In that video, you saw Jackie Fielder, who was our organizer. She went on to help lead a very successful public bank campaign in California. They passed an initiative a few months back where they're going to be able to start opening public banks. And then we're also working with tribes to get tribes to look into opening tribally owned banks. So we're really big on providing alternatives and solutions for folks. So that's some of the current work we're involved with, along with the Stop the Money Pipeline stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Great. Thank you, Matt and Rachel. Yeah, for sharing all of that really inspiring work. I saw a lot of familiar faces in that video. If you took part in a Divest the Globe action, you can tell folks about it in the chat. Actually, before I knew any of you, organized an action in England where I was living at the time. So really cool to see it sort of all come together there in that global day. So building off of the amazing work that Matt and Rachel and other Indigenous leaders have done over the past 2 years, there's a new campaign that has come together called the Stop the Money Pipeline campaign. And we are, as a campaign, demanding, let's see if I can get the next slide, that banks, asset managers, institutional investors, and insurance companies stop financing, insuring, and investing in climate destruction. So the Wall Street banks are clearly bankrolling the climate crisis and indigenous rights abuses, but we also have all these other sectors on and off Wall Street that are fueling climate chaos. So 350 Seattle, Mazaska Talks, Rainforest Action Network, teamed up with a whole bunch of organizations. You can see just a few of them on the left there. I think there's more than 90. Matt is currently on the steering committee of the Stop the Money Pipeline campaign, and I'm also involved, and Alec from 350 Seattle is one of the co-coordinators. And you'll hear about why, since Seattle has really been at the forefront of this movement. So the Stop the Money Pipeline campaign is working to end financing towards fossil fuels and deforestation, and demanding that financial institutions start respecting human rights and indigenous sovereignty. Because we believe that Wall Street can no longer be complicit in destroying our planet and harming our communities. And as Matt was just saying, we're also imagining new, more just economic systems. So what we're going to talk about today are kind of the two kind of campaigns that we are working on here in Seattle. Stop the Money Pipeline has 3 key targets right now, gearing up for some action this spring. And those are Chase, BlackRock, and Liberty Mutual. Here in Seattle, there are big corporate offices for Chase and Liberty Mutual and campaigns that have been running. So I'm going to pass it over to Sue and Cody now from 350 Seattle's Chase team to talk about the Chase campaign. So over to you, Sue. Let me just, all right, you're all set.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sue, and I've been working with 350 and the Chase campaign since September last year. Just have to throw it out there. It's probably some of the most satisfying work I've ever done in my life. Becoming part of something that's bigger than me and is going to live, hopefully, a better future for the upcoming generations. I'm just basically going to go over what I think most of us know about the state of the planet and how we're trying to keep the temperatures from rising above 1.5 degrees. So if we do reach the 1.5 degrees and above, we're just going to go into a domino-style collapse of the ecosystems. So just to give like a quick idea of what staying at a 1.5 degree, we will be able to save about 23% of what we have left of the coral reefs in the planet. If we do reach a 2 degree Celsius above pre-industrial levels, we will have no coral left in the planet. So with that being said, we know that the most important thing that we have to do to keep those temperatures from rising is to stop the CO2 from reaching our atmosphere. And we should be going to 50% of what we're producing at 2018, and to be carbon neutral. So by 2030, we should reduce our emissions by half what it was in 2018. And by 2050, we should be completely neutral. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So here's where the banks come. It takes a lot of money and a lot of effort and resources for the development of the infrastructure of all of these pipelines and the facilities where the oil and the gas gets processed, and the banks are funding all of this. Chase is the #1 funder of fossil fuel developments since the Paris Accord in 2018. They've invested about $196 billion. So like really, I think it probably have reached the $200 billion already into the funding of fossil fuels. Can we go back to the thing? Oh. Yeah, so basically we know that I think we're reaching to the point that we know that the only way to make these banks and funding corporations to stop funding is by putting pressure on them, and that's why we're doing all of these campaigns against Chase and other banks, to put pressure on them. You don't necessarily have to be part of like a campaign to put pressure onto a bank. It is awesome to have more numbers out there so that they see that more people are coming up and putting pressure on them. But you can also be part of the movement by reaching out to your bank or just reaching out to the banks and asking as a citizen to stop funding these developments and put pressure on them. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. So Chase, we're going after Chase because, as I previously said, they're the #1 funder of developments. They're the #1 in Arctic drilling, #1 in deep sea drilling. They are the number one funder of the LNG. And like right now, something that has caught a lot of our attention is the Coastal Gas Link pipeline, which is going over there with Sweden territories, and that is also being funded by JP Morgan Chase. And yeah, I think that's basically what I got. So I'm gonna pass it on to Cody.
Hey everybody, I'm Cody. Yeah, so like Matt and Rachel were saying, we've done a lot of work getting banks to, or working with banks to divest from fossil fuels. We also started by getting the city of Seattle to divest from these banks. And that was really just the beginning for us. So then the next slide. Yeah, so we started doing a lot of different actions, focusing specifically on Chase because they are the largest funder of fossil fuels in the entire world. And so we've done tons of different actions over the last 3 years. We've done a lot of, just bank disruptions, going into the banks and causing a ruckus, delivering letters. We've locked down banks and shut them down and had people arrested. Had probably well over 26 people arrested at this point. We've done a lot of also what's called bird dogging, where we've gone after the leaders within Chase. For example, Phyllis Campbell is the chairwoman of the Pacific Northwest Chase, and we have gone and disrupted her at public events, essentially shaming her for her involvement in funding the fossil fuel industry, especially since Chase does have a pretty successful greenwashing campaign going on, and just trying to point out to them that that is not enough. And then next slide. We've done some bigger things, like in May of 2018, we shut down all of 2nd Avenue in front of the Russell Investment Center. We put up a bunch of tarpies, and it was a big deal, shutting down the entire road for the day, really to get a lot of media attention and really draw people's attention to that, and to escalate the campaign and show Chase that we were serious and that we had the power to take over the streets. And then we did that, I think I have the next slide, right? Yeah, so we did that again last month. We shut down 2nd Avenue yet again. We had tripods, tarpies, tons of beautiful banners and parachutes and lots of singing. We also, if you see there, we had a miniature little Chase bank with an actual pipe spewing oil out of it. It was coffee. But it was just spewing that out all day, and it was really beautiful. And so we were there for a couple hours, and then the next day we went into a different Chase bank, occupied that, and had a grieving ceremony. And we had 28 people arrested on that day. And so that was just a month ago, and the campaign just keeps growing. We're having more and more people come up to these actions. They're always a great time. And we're really starting to make Chase really scared. And it's, I don't know, I'm really proud of it, being involved in it. So yeah, then a week after we shut down 2nd Avenue, JP Morgan Chase put out a policy saying, they were gonna reduce the number of coal mining people they were financing and all these things. But if you looked at it, it really was just minuscule. The effect it would have. It would impact about 1% of Chase's overall funding of the fossil fuel industry, which really is just not enough for it being 2020 and how high the stakes are. So we're looking at what to do next in response to this policy. So Sue and I, and maybe some other people on this call, are going to be, we're going to be leading actions on March 20th. And it's going to be a entire Pacific Northwest Action Day, where we're going and we're saying that Chase really needs to divest. We're going to have some we're going to have a lot of different actions, probably disrupting multiple chases, telling them they need to do better because they are still the largest funder of fossil fuels despite what they're saying. And that's going to also be in a lead up to doing even more actions for Earth Day on April 23rd. And I am seeing there's a poll popped up here. And if you are available to do these things, we would love to know, and we would love to plug you in. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Cody. So folks can, if they can see that poll there, please fill it out so we can get in touch with you about the upcoming actions and make sure you're in the loop and invited. And if there are any roles that you want to play in those actions, you can check them off there. We'll be sure to, get you included in the organizing. So I'll leave that up for a minute so folks can vote. And as Cody said, on March 20th, it's going to be a day of action across the Pacific Northwest. So there are folks here outside of Seattle, and you have a Chase or maybe another bank, Wall Street bank near you. We can equip you with everything you need to take action on that day. So feel free to be in touch. I will put my email in the chat here so you can reach out and I can connect you with the right folks. So continue to vote. We are going to talk quickly now about insurance, which is another sector that is driving, supporting fossil fuels. And then we're gonna hear more about how you can get involved. So, insurance is an invisible but essential part of the fossil fuel economy, and has kind of flown under the radar a little bit while the banks have gotten the most of the pressure. But over the past year or so, US insurance companies are also coming under increasing scrutiny because if you don't have insurance, you can't build a fossil fuel project in the same way you need insurance to drive a car, buy a house. On the right here is the certificate of insurance for the Trans Mountain Tar Sands Pipeline, which is yet another pipeline that is being built across Canada without the consent of impacted First Nations. And so you can see all different companies that are providing coverage for that, for the risks of the project, like spilling. Insurance companies also take premiums from you and me for our car and home insurance and invest it in fossil fuels. So Liberty Mutual alone has $8.9 billion in coal, oil, and gas companies. And I should have said on the last slide that Liberty Mutual is providing coverage, actually the most coverage of any company for the Trans Mountain Pipeline. The third reason that we're going after insurers is because they know what's happening with climate change. They've got the scientific models and they see it, and they're adjusting their own business practices. So the town in Northern California where my family lives, Liberty Mutual dropped every home insurance policy after a bad wildfire season a few years ago because they know it's happening and it's not something they want to be a part of, right? So instead of protecting communities and their clients, they are fueling the climate crisis and then abdicating any responsibility. So that's why we have been campaigning on Liberty Mutual over the past about 6 months. So we officially launched a campaign in October in Boston, and then a month later showed up at the offices in Seattle in the bottom right corner. And we're calling on Liberty Mutual to stop insuring fossil fuels, starting with coal and tar sands, and really pushing them to take responsibility for their role fueling the climate crisis. So on that Second Avenue shutdown that Cody was just talking about, we finished up outside of Chase and we went over to Liberty Mutual and we said, hey, we've got our eyes on you too. We're coming for you. So they know that we see their involvement in the tar sand sector. Last December, actually just a few months after launching the campaign, we did get a policy from Liberty Mutual, but in the same way that we saw Chase was not enough, Liberty Mutual's policy is really, really weak. It's just on coal, and it even has major loopholes when it comes to coal. So we're pushing them to be stronger. So what's next in the campaign? We're going to continue highlighting Liberty Mutual's role in supporting the tar sand sector and complicity in indigenous rights abuses. We are mobilizing policyholders to exercise their rights. So if you own any sort of insurance policy with Liberty Mutual, you may be able to vote on certain things, attend policyholder meetings, because they are a company that are owned by the people that own policies. So we're going to have a poll question coming up about that, but please be in touch because you may have a really important voice in this. We are working with Matt and other folks, the Waterkeeper Alliance, to pressure the city of Seattle to buy insurance from fossil-free insurers. So similarly to what y'all did around Wells Fargo in the city of Seattle. And we're looking ahead to Earth Week, which is April 22nd to April 24th. As you saw before, April 23rd is the National Finance Mobilization Day. So we'll be taking action here in Seattle on Chase and Liberty Mutual. So that's it on Liberty Mutual. The next piece is we just want to make sure that everyone knows how they can get involved in this work. So I'm going to end that poll from before, and I'm going to put up a new one. And this one is, are you a customer of Chase or Liberty Mutual or the other Stop the Money pipeline target, which is BlackRock, does asset management? So if you could fill that out, then we can be in touch with you, because when we are coordinated in how we are closing our accounts and communicating our demands, we are so much stronger. As you saw in Matt and Rachel's presentation, kind of coming together and having actions around closing accounts, burning credit cards, makes such a stronger statement than doing it alone. So if you add your information in there, we can coordinate together. Give you a minute on this poll. And then I'm going to launch one more, which is about continuing to stay in the loop. So we have a newly launched Stop the Money Pipeline Seattle listserv. And if you say you'd like to be on it here, we will add your name, add your email, and you'll get all the updates about upcoming actions and other things that are happening here in the Seattle area. I also did just want to give a shout out. I know a lot of folks might be new to the 350 Seattle space. So we have another form that you can fill out, because Stop the Money Pipeline is just one tiny piece of everything that 350 Seattle does. So there's campaigns, other campaigns, keep fossil fuels in the ground, transportation, housing, Green New Deal, artful activism, solidarity, equity, and inclusion. So many, many things that you can get involved in. So I'm just going to drop another survey in the chat. So if you want to figure out where you best plug into 350 Seattle, want someone to talk to about what the organization does, fill this out and we will be in touch with you. And I am now going to pass it over to Jeff from Protectors of the Salish Sea to speak briefly about the work that Protectors are doing, and then we'll answer some questions. So let's see. Jeff, do you want to raise your hand again like you did a second ago? Okay, I think you are good to talk now, Jeff.
All right. Hey guys, my name's Jeff. I'm here to honor the work of Paul Wagner and the Protectors of the Salish Sea. I was told that there was already some folks doing a land acknowledgement. Maybe I came in late and missed that. But you know, we're here on Dukduach territory, Duwamish, colonially known. I cannot welcome you to that land. It is not mine to welcome you on. But you know, I want to recognize the work of all of the first people of the Salish Sea that have been here. The Protectors of the Salish Sea are a relatively new organization that started with the September prayer walk. It was 47 miles from Tahoma to the Stachos village site where the Capitol building is located. And we were there to demand that Washington State honors the treaties and recognizes indigenous peoples' authority to protect their land, the water, and all the creatures that reside it. Then this is no longer a promise that they can keep, you know, with the Creator, with Mother Earth, without, you know, every time they try, they're met with hostility. And so we've been calling out the political aspect. We're a part of the coalition. Every Tarpey you saw in every one of those pictures came from Paul Wagner. He sent over 40 to the Standing Rock occupation and has sent several more to different fossil fuel resistance camps around. So he definitely stands in solidarity with the Stop the Money pipeline part, but his biggest focus and Protectors of the Salish Sea's largest focus is the political and legal aspect, recognizing, demanding that Jay Lindsay recognize treaty rights and that he declare a climate emergency. So since that first walk in Tahoma, or from Tacoma to Olympia on September 24th, we have every day been down there at sunrise holding ceremony. And a lot of times these are, you know, real small sunrise ceremonies just to remind them that we're still there. However, we wanted to invite everybody to come out March 10th. We'll be doing another prayer walk, starting at the Sylvester Park. This is during there's a legislative session going on now, and we are going down to demand that they declare the climate emergency, start a special legislative session, and I think it's called the People's Council. I might be mixing that up, but start a citizens council. There we go, to address some of these issues. And so we're hoping, you know, right after those actions you guys saw where they shut down 2nd Street, where 28 people were arrested in the bank, Protectors of the Salish Sea had a prayer walk. We were just walking from Lake Washington or Lake Duwamish down to the Salish Sea or Puget Sound. And on we started this walk on the 23rd, and we were, despite just walking peacefully, we were assaulted by police. 6 people were arrested. Everyone was released without charges that, like, we knew personally. There was someone else in there that we didn't know that got charges, that nobody has a close connection with. But so we were determined to continue that walk, and the 29th we came out, and 350 and a lot of allies came out with us. And because we had those allies with us, the police stood down and nobody was hurt. And so I've been hearing a lot of people talk about solidarity, and Protectors of the Salish Sea are asking that you guys show the same kind of solidarity that those Tarpees have shown in every single picture that was on here. We could really use some support at 733 Sylvester Park down in Olympia. It will be a prayer walk. It should be completely peaceful. Having a lot of allies there will ensure that it is, because indigenous people, when they come on their own, face assault. This happened at Standing Rock. It was very intentional that, you know, on some actions we would very purposefully make the front line all allies. And when that happened, there was less assault by the police officers. They were less aggressive. And so it would really mean a lot to have folks come out and support us. March 10th, as you see the slide there, meet us at Sylvester Park at sunrise, 7:33. And, you know, be prepared to walk for a little bit. I appreciate you guys giving us the time and listening. You know, we'll continue to be at your actions, and we hope to see some of you at ours. And we wish best of luck with the Stop the Money pipeline campaign. Sorry, some people walked up. I'm popping the trunk now. Yeah. Yeah, anywhere you've seen those Tarpies, it's been Paul Wagner and the Protectors of the Salish Sea kind of leading that, and we could use the support as well. That's about all I have. I kind of just sort of prepped this last minute to give you guys a little bit, not trying to take up too much time, but would like to see you all there.
Great. Thank you, Jeff, and to all the protectors, who have been kind of integral to the Chase campaign and over the last few years here in Seattle. And we can send along any information about March 10th so folks know all the details. So before we move into the Q&A section and wrap up for this evening, we wanted to share another aspect of the Stop the Money pipeline that has been really important here, here in Seattle, which is song. So there is an amazing collective called the People's Echo, which has been catching songs and teaching them to folks because our actions are so much stronger when we have music, prayer. So we wanted to play the Stop the Money pipeline song for you all. Be warned, it is extremely catchy and may be in your head for the next week. Unfortunately, it looks like I didn't put the right link in the video, so let me just pull that up real quick. And in the meantime, please add your questions to the chat and we will get to those. Or to the Q&A or to the chat, wherever. You can put them anywhere. Okay, I'm gonna share. Folks can see my screen again, hopefully. Pipeline. May our money and our values be aligned. To life and the future we are loyal. When we stop the flow of money, then we stop the flow of oil. Stop the money pipeline. May our money and our values be aligned. To life and the future we are loyal. When we stop the flow of money, then we stop the flow of oil. All right. So you can listen and learn it here. If we're in person together, we wanted to get everyone singing it and standing up and stomping, but you can practice it at home. And also the People's Echo has monthly song teach-ins where you can go and learn these songs. You don't need to have any kind of previous experience singing in groups or anything. So you can send along that information. So let's see what questions we have here. And if folks on the webinar want to take off video so you can answer some of these questions, that would be great. Let's see, I've got a question for you, Jeff, which is if there are any ride shares from Seattle going to the March 10th walk in Olympia.
Sorry. Oh, okay. There we go. Was in the chats and didn't see the unmute button. I will. That is a good question. I will make sure to get that up and get it. Is it okay if I send it to you personally?
Yep. I'll make sure to send it out.
Awesome. I will work together at getting that. Thanks for bringing that question up. That was a good one. We'll get some together.
Great. Let's see, there are some questions here that Matt has already answered. I don't know if Matt, you want to share any of your answers with everyone?
One of the questions was specifically around good insurance companies, and I gave your email as one, so maybe you could respond to that particular question, because I don't know.
Quickly, there's some fossil-free insurers. The one that has been a real advocate and ally of this campaign is called Lemonade, but they mostly do renters and home insurance, so it depends what you're looking for. There are some insurance companies that are less terrible than others, and then also in general, kind of the principle that I like to follow is looking for smaller local companies, because those are going to be just generally less involved in the dirty, nasty industry. But I can give you more details on that.
One of the other questions was about folks, I believe they're with Bank of America, want to know where to put their money. So I just provided a link to mazaskatalks.org, and we actually have a kind of a toolkit about banks who are not invested into fossil fuels and other problematic industries like private prisons and stuff like that, detention centers. And generally, I'm personally a big fan of credit unions. Credit unions are a great place to bank. Credit unions are member owned, and by their statute or bylaws or whatever they're called, they're not allowed to, or they do not invest into fossil fuel industry, and their money has to stay within the community. So any credit unions is a great option for most folks.
Great, thank you, Matt. See, I've got a question for some of the Chase folks, or Matt or Rachel. As a Chase mortgage holder and as a stockholder, anything I can do in particular? Anyone want to take a stab at that one?
I'm here. This is Rachel. And I think this goes back also to, you know, the original thing we had talked about in the beginning is, you know, deciding who we bank with. Matt gave some good suggestions on credit unions and solutions, you know, that we can use in the meantime. I personally, you know, use the credit unions also. But it's about, you know, where we decide to put our money. And so right now, you know, with the solutions that we do have, until we get things such as public banks, tribal banks, you know, so that we have those other avenues, you know, just, I think ethically deciding for yourself, are you okay where your money's at and where it's getting, you know, ultimately invested.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. The other thing I'll add is that if you are a stockholder in Chase or any of these other banks, you can attend, depending on how much stock you have, you can attend, but it's not that much, I think. You can attend their annual general meetings for investors, and you can ask questions there. You can participate in actions potentially, and in front of all the investors of the company. Or you can provide a proxy, so you can say, hey, this person can go instead of me. And I know there are folks organizing around Chase's annual general meeting this year, so should be in touch, Richard. Let's see, I don't see any other questions. Folks have last thoughts they want to throw into the chat or Q&A box. We have 4 minutes. I think it might be a fun trip to the Chase AGM. It is in Ohio this year, so a bit of a trek from Washington. But the last few years, there have been pretty powerful actions at them. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Rachel, Matt, Cody, Sue, and Jeff for speaking and sharing all of your knowledge. And we will be in touch with more details about everything that we talked about today. A reminder, if you are new to 350 Seattle and want to figure out what else is happening in the space and where you can plug in, please fill out that form, the 350 Seattle Get Involved form, and we will be in touch with you. So thank you and have a great night. Yeah, and if all the panelists want to take yourselves off mute and say goodbye, can do that right now.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate y'all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. See you out there.